Hello friends, welcome to Gardening with Creekside. I am Jenny, and you can tell that today we're in a bit of a slightly different location. We are here at 4-Star Greenhouses in Michigan, and what a treat it is. So what we're going to be focusing on today is kind of the production side of the greenhouses. This nursery is just on a whole nother level. Huge facilities, massive gorgeous plants, amazing technology and automation in here. So we got to have a little tour through the greenhouses, and I'm just going to hit the highlights, right? So you have been with us through our greenhouse. You've seen how we as a small family business do production on our scale, but this just takes it to a whole nother level. So I'm going to try to go through the different areas of production and talk about them. So the first thing that is obvious to me is the floor. So when you have greenhouses on this large of a scale, and even will tell you as a home gardener, the best way to irrigate and to water your plants is not mainly from the top down, it's from the bottom up. So that is what they do here, and they have several different systems that they use. So the one that we're standing on now is actually a mat with different layers of, it's got some gravel in there, it's got the irrigation lines in here. You can see right now this is kind of just the top layer. There are some lines in it to keep everybody nice and straight. This block has been used. They've moved these plants out of here, but the water comes up from the bottom. It waters the plants and then it drains. So that's one of these. Then what they have a lot of are what I consider the plain concrete floors that just have these nice big massive holes throughout. The water bubbles up from the bottom. It floods that block, sits there for an appropriate amount of time, and then through those same drain holes that the water came up, the water will then flow away. It is just a really cool system because you really want to water your plants from the bottom, front instead of the top, to keep, of course, diseases and pests, foliage dry, so forth and so on. So those, I think, were the two main sources, the mat and then just the concrete floor. What's also really neat about with the water that they use to irrigate, they recycle their water. So here you can actually see the whole filtration system that happens when they are filtering their water. You can look and see where the machine is. So once the water comes back down through the ground, the floor, it'll come through this system. The one that you can see where the dirt's kind of on the metal is the first layer. So that gets out the big stuff, right? The big chunks. Then it'll work its way through, and then to the right of that, there is a paper filter. So it gets all of that fine material, and then it continues to get processed, and then they can use it again. So there is no waste here. They're not, just chunking it out. They're recycling their water for irrigation. Excellent, very smart. Now, you will also notice here in this area of the production, you can see what they call booms. And so there's multiple ones in different locations. This one, of course, is the closest to us right here. Again, this is all based off of computer programming, and you will see that there are nozzles from the top. This is where they're going to get most of their fertigation from. So fertigation is when you mix fertilizer with water. So it's a half fertilizer, half irrigation, right? But what's so cool is that the computer, the system, knows exactly that these are hydrangeas right here. So they need a certain kind of fertilizer. But right here, we have roses. They need a totally different kind of fertilizer, and maybe at different points. So based on the crop, it will fertilize appropriately for that. And it is so smart that it knows that there are no plants right here, so these nozzles will not work. So they're like, there's no plant, I'm not gonna waste my time, energy, or resources on that. But you can see that they're all throughout here. Of course, this is all gonna be, both the irrigation and the fertilizer will be based on the crop. So depending if we have sprinter boxwoods, the roses, the hydrangeas, all of that will be dependent on that plant. Now, what is really cool too is this system, you want to talk about some amazing automation. Oh my gosh. You know that we joke at Creekside, we even have shirts made that say we're professional plant movers. They're professional plant movers here too, but a little bit of a less, maybe a little bit less labor intensive. So this fantastic machine are forks, right? So basically what it does is it will come in and scoop up the pots. So you've got pots in all of these rows, and then the operator can just easily, with the controls, move it wherever they want. They can put it on carts, put it on the carts, take it off the carts. If they need to move them from here, they can move them from over there. It is just the absolute coolest thing. These are 1 gallon shrubs here, and approximately this will hold about 100 shrubs. So imagine the time that is saved by using this machinery as opposed to having to hand do it. And then of course, they're all in nice, beautiful, straight rows. So this was a really fun thing to see. Now, another really interesting, this was fun because we've done hanging baskets with y'all a lot of times. Up in this particular greenhouse, this is what they call a fixed line, meaning that it doesn't move. So we have above us, and these are the exact same drippers that we have at Creekside. So they have the hooks, so they can actually have 2 layers of hanging baskets. So one hanging baskets will just hang on the purlin, then there's a hook, so then you have another layer, just like what we did in the new production greenhouses. So you can get as many plants in here as you possibly can. Then you'll recognize those drippers, same ones that we have. Again, all the water, the fertigation, everything will go through there. But in another greenhouse that we were in, I don't remember the exact name. It's basically a carousel, right? And so instead of being a fixed line, this is a moving line. So it's on basically a little conveyor belt. So those hanging baskets will move through, and then at the end of the greenhouse is where all the irrigation is. Now this was really cool. So it will know as the basket goes past, it'll flip a little switch, and it'll tell it that this basket's the higher one or this basket's the lower one. So depending on which little switch gets flipped, as it goes past the water, just the top water will come on or the bottom water will come on. So it's so smart that it knows, okay, I only need to use spray on the top, or on the next one, okay, I'm spraying on the bottom, or if there's no hanging basket there at all, it won't spray anything at all. Again, automation is key when you have got just the enormity and the size of production that they have here at 4-Star. But of course, as always, even if you have the best automation in the world, if you don't have fantastic employees, then it's absolutely worthless. And so they were just talking about how they have such great loyal customers here at 4-Star, which, as you know, will make all the difference in, it doesn't matter what kind of business you're in. If you've got great loyal employees, then it's wonderful. One other thing that is really neat here at 4-Star is how they control their pest problem, because if you've gardened for more than a hot second, you know that you're going to deal with bugs and pests. On a massive scale like 4-Star, that is no different. In fact, it's probably even worse. So this is really interesting. They use a ton of biological controls for their pests, as opposed to using just spraying chemicals over and over again. So there's a couple of things here that I wanted to show you. One, on the booms, you'll notice they have these bright yellow cards. Those are sticky. So for whatever reason, a lot of pests are attracted to the color yellow. So they will fly up, and then because it's sticky, they stick to it, and then they can't get off. So that is what's going on over here. Now, you'll notice that we have a white bucket here on the floor. There were several down throughout in different places where they are hung between kind of the poles. This is where the predatory wasps are hatching and coming out. So a predatory wasp, we have used these at Creekside before. They're not like the wasp like you maybe traditionally think. They're little, tiny little guys, and what they do is they go after aphids. So they will come out of the bucket and be released out into the open, They go find their food source, and then they have a great munch on tons of aphids and then other different pests in here. So we've got the yellow sticky cards, we've got the predatory wasp, and then if you will notice on the ceiling, there is a cloth. So here in Michigan, they too deal with Japanese beetles. So the cloth, this whole greenhouse is basically enclosed, even though the air can come in and out, but it has such a fine weave that pests cannot come in and out of. So this will keep the Japanese beetles out of this area, because if you deal with Japanese beetles, you know how absolutely destructive they can be. So that was a really neat thing that I found, because I didn't know that they dealt with Japanese beetles here. But yes, so the whole cloth on the roof, on the sides, everywhere keeps the beetles out. So again, being very smart, being very wise on how they control the pest in here using those biologicals and physical barriers to keep those guys out. So right now, what's kind of happening, because remember it is August, right? So we're in the middle to the end of August. So a lot of what we're seeing right now is more on their shrub production line. Of course, the annuals won't get really cranked up until about maybe December or January. But what is fun is after they grow out all of these great plants, then they have to get them out of this location, right? And they have to get them into our hands. So whether that is from a consumer and they're ordering for the retail, or if it's growers like us, then of course they have a whole process that they use for their shipping. So that was a really neat, interesting place to go visit. And so they have everything, again, is automated. So when Creekside gets our order, they know exactly, okay, this tray is going to Creekside. The little computer, the cameras read it. They send it down all the different conveyor belts. They get boxed up, sent to us. Same thing for consumers. They have a whole great shipping department. We saw some folks potting up 1 gallon shrubs and various things that they were sending out to people. The fellow over shipping said it's about a 2 to 3 day ship time. Unless you're on the West Coast, it's a little bit longer. But again, you know, it's always kind of a constant production here. They are doing more construction. Of course, they are growing. So in fact, if Jerry just spins around, you can see over our shoulder here that they are working on expanding. Just like, you know, all these nurseries, this whole industry is growing and blooming and booming and thriving. And so they have to constantly be adding on more greenhouses, because they've got, the demand is so high, they've got to get those plants out to us. So if you get any kind of Proven Winners annual, it's either going to come from here in Michigan at 4-Star or Pleasant View. So those are the only 2 houses that are the Proven Winners annuals. This is where they come from. So it's been really neat for us to be able to come here and see where our little babes come from and how they're grown out, and all of the thought and the care that goes into this whole production. But I hope you have found this a little bit informative, just to kind of get a glimpse as to see how these plants are grown. Jerry and I were talking, and we would love to come back sometime like maybe January, February, when they're in the height of all of their annual production, because that's a whole nother series of how do our petunias come to be. So as always, thank you so much for gardening with Creekside. Y'all have a fantastic day, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye, friends.